Hold on. Let's get this shit. Let's get this shit. Let's get this shit. Let's.
What's up, Culture Gang? How y'all doing? It's Miller time.
I hate it here.
We looking at biggest chunks by NBA legends.
Culture Gang.
Culture Gang by the homie Barry McCockner.
Yes, sir.
Collab? Question mark?
Yes, sir. But yeah, it's been requested for the longest time, and we just haven't got to it. Now we get into it.
Yeah,
Raylan Herman, shout out to you. Sorry it took so long, but yeah.
here it is.
Here it is.
We love
Y'all
you.
ready?
We love you.
I'm ready.
I'm not ready. Look at Reggie Miller, dog.
We gonna do this. Let's get it.
In sports, a choker is
Nigga, it ain't even shut up.
worst things an athlete
Long
can be
ass
labeled
video.
as. One of the reasons the choker label is so hard to get rid of is because there's really no one definition of what choking is. In some instances, it might be a singular game where a team blew a huge lead. 2016.
Hey, quick note, Matt Ryan plans to retire on 3/28.
That's wild.
Or it could refer to a singular play where a player had a humongous brain fart at the worst possible moment.
I think
What's
so.
up, Chris Webber? Or it could mean a team blowing a playoff series lead, like, let's
that
say, a 73-win team blowing a 3-1 lead in the finals? Imagine if that actually happened. Or it could just plain be a player performing well below
Did you
their
just catch the
usual standard in a playoff series that resulted in their team losing. And you want to know a dirty little secret? Every single great player has choked at some point in their careers. In this particular video, I'm going to focus on the biggest choke jobs by a handful of NBA legends or current great players. Nobody is safe. Starting off with a blast from the past, Larry Bird, aka Larry Legend, is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Three-time league MVP and two-time finals MVP, as well as a three-time NBA champion. He was absolutely feared by opponents in clutch situations, but that doesn't mean that he was flawless. An in-depth look at his postseason career shows that Larry Legend had quite a few more playoff disappointments than one might expect. But what was Larry Legend's biggest meltdown? A series where he underperformed so greatly that it could be argued that he single-handedly cost the Celtics a series. Well, look no further than the 1988 Eastern Conference Finals versus the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Statistically, it could be argued that the 1988 season was the best season of Larry Bird's
He
career.
had no back.
He had no back, bro. What do you want him to do?
Had no back is
He averaged
crazy.
a career high in points and player efficiency rating, and he finished second in MVP voting behind Michael Jordan. The Celtics were fresh off of 4 straight trips to the NBA Finals, and they barely got back to the conference finals after squeaking by the Atlanta Hawks in 7 games. But for whatever reason, Larry Bird just didn't have it in this series, shooting a dreadful 35% from the floor and averaging over 10 points per game fewer than he did in the regular season. All 4 of the Celtics' losses in the series were down to the wire. And if Larry had played up to his standards that he was known for, then there's no reason to think the Celtics couldn't have beaten the Pistons once again. 1980
Sounds like 2011.
Stop it.
was the last
We'll
deep
talk about
playoff
that
run the
later.
Celtics ever made in the Larry Bird era before his body broke down and made him a shell of the player he once was. And although his
He had no
legacy
back.
is
I tried
secure in
to tell
NBA history, this is a series that I'm sure he would like to forget. You
Only
can't
his
talk
boxes
about
up.
Larry Bird without also talking about his biggest rival, Magic Johnson. Great porn name, by the way. Magic's greatness on the basketball court is undeniable. A 5-time champion, a 3-time finals MVP, a 3-time league MVP, the all-time
Anybody
leader in
bringing the
assists
ball
per
up like
game,
that,
and by
just
far the
tripping.
Right,
all-time
what the
leader
fuck?
in
What you couldn't do
postseason
with this
assists.
nigga?
It was hard to come up with a decision on what was Magic Johnson's biggest playoff disappointment.
Tragic
After all, in
Johnson.
none of the playoff series that he lost in his prime, he never really put up bad numbers. However, there is one particular series in which Magic certainly wasn't at his best in the fourth quarter. And all my diehard NBA fans already know that I'm talking about the 1984 finals. Magic's per game averages in the series were still great, but as I said in the intro,
He shoot a single 3 the whole series.
different kinds of
These
choking.
numbers right here are proof that stats don't mean everything.
Bro, he didn't even average a block a game. Is he 6'9" for no reason?
But
Imagine
If
being
that's the
tall
case,
for no
this is a
reason.
Chris
Stop
Webber
it.
type of choke, where a
Oh,
few
you know.
bad plays were so bad that it could be argued that they cost his team the series despite his normally good play in the
Oh,
series. I don't know if
my.
anybody has ever specifically asked Magic this, but I'm pretty sure that this is the series that he regrets the most in his entire career. And although he would later beat the Celtics and Larry Bird
Got to
2
the
times in the
Rams, yeah.
finals, in the moment, losing to his bitter rival had to have been hell. And the worst part is, he really doesn't have anybody else to blame but himself. But I'm sure
Right.
Magic doesn't spend too much time sulking about this series. After all, he's a very positive person. Not even the NBA's all-time leading scorer is immune from choking
for now.
now and then. While Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's entire career was the personification of greatness, his years with the Milwaukee Bucks were his best statistically. In 1973 was certainly no different. He should have
Music
won
is
his
fun.
third straight MVP, but the voters gave it to Dave Cowens of the Boston Celtics, who won 68 games. Even though by every statistical measure, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar blew Cowens out of the water. But Kareem's outstanding 1973 regular season just makes his 1973 postseason even more puzzling, as he saw a major drop-off in points and efficiency, and the Bucks lost in the first round. For a man who was normally excellent in the postseason during his prime, this sticks out like a sore thumb. But I'm not sure Kareem is stressing too much about it. After all, he finished his career with 6 MVPs and 6 championships. But nevertheless, 1973 is a postseason that Cap would like to forget. Wilt Chamberlain was a prolific scorer both on and off the basketball court. In fact, your grandma probably slept with him at one point or another. But this is a basketball video, not a sex video, so we're going to make it all about Wilt Chamberlain's on-court career, which, by the way, was pretty fucking good. Wilt's career was very interesting and, in my opinion, can be divided into 3 different phases. Phase 1 were the first 7 years of his career, where he put up monumental scoring numbers and won 7 straight scoring titles. Phase 2 was 1967 and 1968, playing with the 76ers, where he took on less scoring but more of an all-around role, even leading the league
8.2 assists a game. It's
this
crazy.
in 1968.
Hey,
And the third and
original
final
Jokic?
phase of his career, when he was
Facts.
older with the Los Angeles Lakers from 1969 to 1973, and purposely didn't look to score as much as he did earlier in his career when he was in his prime. This context is necessary when trying to evaluate which was Wilt's biggest choke job in the postseason. After all, Wilt already has the label of a choker in some circles,
he is,
though
bro.
he does have 2 rings and a Finals MVP on his
Stop
resume.
it.
He
With all
is.
this being said, I decided to go with
Talk about them goddamn Celtics, them default Hall of Famers, bro.
Bro, they
you know
don't-
them. You know them players in 2K that they bring out after your rookie year. In my career, that's the niggas Bill Russell.
Bro, this is what I'm talking about, though.
Make-A-Wish kids.
Guess what? Who is Wilt playing with? Me? You expect me and Wilt to go beat Bill Russell?
I don't want to hear that.
1968 Eastern Conference Finals as Wilt's biggest individual choke job. Why does this get the nod? Well, for a multitude of different reasons. They were the defending champions, Wilt's first ring. They had the best record in the league in 1968, and they had the MVP. Guess who? Wilt, the 4th and final MVP of his career. So when they went up 3-1 on the aging Boston Celtics in the Eastern Divisional Finals, the same Boston Celtics team they had eliminated the year before, everybody assumed that they were going to repeat as champions. But that wasn't the case.
Right.
Wilt greatly underperformed in the last 3 games.
You're gonna have to stop moaning in my ear, dog.
Bro, just watch the thing.
Nah, you
video.
know
It's
what?
Why the 76ers
Stop
fell
moaning
right
my fucking
behind.
ear.
To make things worse, this would be the last game Wilt would ever play with the 76ers, demanding a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers
After
from
you
Jerry
fucked
West
up?
and Elgin Baylor shortly afterwards. I happen to think Wilt Chamberlain being known as a choker is unfair and lazy, but in this particular case, it was definitely appropriate. Dirk Nowitzki is one of the greatest players of all time, not just for his regular season consistency, but for his tendency to increase his production come playoff time. He's one of the very few players
I'd
throughout
definitely
NBA
be the
history
series
that
against the
actually
Warriors.
gets better in terms of production in the
What the-
postseason
Oh, I
without
thought you
losing
meant
any
something.
efficiency. But it's safe to say that that wasn't the case in 2007. Any basketball fan remembers the 2007 Western Conference first round series between the Golden State Warriors and the 67
Dwyane Wade
ranked
would
Dallas
never.
Mavericks. Dirk won his first and only league MVP that season, joining the legendary 50-40-90 club along the way. But when it comes to talking about the 2007 season of Dirk Nowitzki, that's where the positives end. Because once the postseason came around, it was a nightmare. Against the Warriors, Dirk was, well, he was horrible. His production and efficiency both fell off of a cliff. And for a guy who was fighting those soft European stereotypes, this wasn't his best moment, as he seemed completely disinterested most of the time. All in all, the Mavericks couldn't overcome Dirk's incredibly subpar play, and they bowed out in 6 games. To this day, it's still seen, rightfully so, as one of the biggest choke jobs by any team in sports history.
40%
Nowadays,
from
Dirk
the field, bro.
Just take a second to look at these numbers.
Bro, only his rebounding went up. All in the steals and blocks.
Seen as a beloved champion and NBA
PER
legend who revolutionized the game with his outside shooting for a 7-footer. But it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine along the way. I just hope Giannis's MVP presentation this year isn't as sad as Dirk's was in 2007. Oh, such a tough scene. Fresh off of an incredibly impressive, albeit heavily ref-aided championship in 2006, Dwyane Wade had cemented himself as a superstar. Yet his title defense in 2007 was not easy by any stretch of the imagination, both individual.
Not even funny.
Why is he looking? Why does he look like that?
Why is he in a blanket?
Why
Thank you.
does he look like that?
That's like just the.
Why is he crying?
Just the like progression of this makes it bad. Like so you go here, right?
I'm about to take this jersey off.
Is he crying?
I'm about to take this jersey off.
It's like,
not
is he good?
by any stretch.
And then, oh no, that makes it worse. I think the blanket
I
makes
think
it
we're
worse.
assholes, bro.
No. The blanket definitely makes it worse.
Both individually and team-wise. The defending champs limped to a 44-38 record, while D-Wade himself missed 31 games with a variety of injuries. Yet heading into their 2007 first-round series against the Chicago Bulls, people expected Miami to right the ship. After all, D-Wade was a superstar, and this was a heavily veteran-laden team. But it didn't quite work out that way. D-Wade performed well below his superstar standards, and the Heat were swept in the first round, going down as one of the worst title defenses in NBA history. This kicked off a disappointing 4-year stretch between Miami's 2000
How many people gonna blame this on system?
title and the arrival of LeBron James and Chris Bosh for the Big Three era. The Miami Heat are one of the most well-run organizations in the entire sport. But say the term 2007 to any Heat fan and they're sure to tremble with disappointment. The most recent addition to this list is oh so sweet for me as a Kawhi Leonard truther. I could go on for hours about how Kawhi Leonard's career is the personification of the
Now, I will say Kawhi played great in 6 games.
Played 6 good games. This is insane.
Game 7
in the right
was.
time, but that
Hey, dog. There's a dude in this series who was on his team who had an even worse stroke than him. But we're not
talking about him.
We don't talk about playoff Heat.
We're not talking about
getting back to the task at hand. The 2020 Los Angeles Clippers will go down as one of the biggest disappointments in NBA history. And the 2020 conference semifinals versus Denver will.
Did you see how that score changed? Was that just me? Go back.
Task at hand, the 2020 Los Angeles Clippers will go down as one of the biggest disappointments in NBA history. And the 2020 conference semifinals versus Denver will go down probably as Kawhi Leonard's biggest choke job. And while most of the blame and jokes will go to Leonard's teammate, Paul George, a.k.a. Way Off P, Leonard himself was absolutely atrocious in the second halves of games in the series. And he had what is most likely the worst game of his career given the circumstances in Game 7, scoring just 14 points on 6 of 22 shooting, including going 1 for 11 in the second half. All year long and all postseason long, really, we had heard about how Kawhi Leonard was overtaking LeBron as the best player in the NBA. But after Leonard's absolutely disgusting performance in this series to blow a 3-1 lead, I think we can put those debates to rest. As of right now, Kawhi Leonard is just a glorified Luol Deng with social anxiety.
Dog, that's a reach and a half.
Good job. Good job. You stretched that.
You stretched the hell out of that.
Be fair to Deng, he does have more career points than Jeff Green and Gordon Hayward, unlike Kawhi. Looks like it wasn't your city after all, bitch. It was pretty easy to choose the biggest choke job of Steph Curry's career, not just because it's the biggest choke job for him, but it's
missing
arguably
game
the
winners
biggest choke
is
job in
insane.
sports history. Anytime your team breaks the single season, regular season wins mark and then goes up 3-1 in the finals just to end up losing, that's a historic choke. I've already gone over Steph Curry's
that's why I want
2016
Iguodala.
performance in depth in my other.
He's 0 for 8. He's gonna get us killed.
Okay, so you trust Steph? You trust Iggy from 3 more
I
than you
want
trust Steph?
Iguodala.
You don't believe
He's
that.
0 for 8. When the game
He could have won this one though.
Hey, when the game comes down to the line, I don't want Steph with the ball. That's why they got KD. They gave a dude who can actually hit the shot.
Facts.
I just love talking about the 2016 finals and the Warriors collapse.
Me too.
After having one of the
God,
greatest
what the fuck would you?
seasons
Why would you
in
throw
NBA
that?
history,
Got locked up by
Steph
Kevin
Curry
Love.
badly underperformed, to put it lightly, in the 2016 finals.
Yeah,
and as
that's
much
right.
as Warriors fans and Steph's cult
Way
fan
off.
base try to make excuses for him, the biggest reason the Warriors lost was
Because
because Steph greatly
Maurice
underperformed. The
Bates right now
stats
do
don't
something.
lie, and the film certainly doesn't lie either. I mean, just look at some of these misses. Absolutely disgusting.
Terrible.
It's no wonder after this series,
That's
Steph
how
and the other
40%
Warriors
for
went
three is
twerking
crazy.
in the Hamptons to Kevin Durant, begging him
He had one of the best regular seasons, maybe a top 5 regular season
I
ever,
don't know about that.
bro.
to join their already
73
shooting wise.
50, 40, 90.
Shooting
And
wise.
speaking of Kevin Durant, the Warriors weren't the only team to blow a 3-1 lead in the 2016 playoffs. In fact, they themselves came back from a 3-1 deficit
That's
the
why
very round
Kyrie just
before the
left your bitch ass, nigga.
against the OKC Thunder. The
Fuck
Thunder, who were led by Kevin Durant, looked poised to make their second finals appearance in 5 years, jumping out on the Warriors and completely dismantling them in games 3 and 4 to
I'm
take a
talking so
3-1
much
lead.
stuff.
The
I
Thunder
was
now
too.
had 3
I was
chances to
too.
win one more game to get back to the finals, and they couldn't do it. Durant
Thanks,
did
Kevin.
put up 40 points in the
And then he
Thunder's
left
game
y'all.
5 loss, but he shot just 12 for 31 from the floor, including 3 of 10 in the fourth quarter, and his impact wasn't nearly as much as his stats would indicate. But hey, you lost a game
Hell
on the road
no,
to a
dog.
73-win team, and you're going home for game 6. It's not the end of the world, right? Well, it kind of is if you're an OKC fan, because in game 6, Durant had one of the worst performances of his career on a big stage, shooting 10 for 31, including
Russell's
1
okay.
of 7 in the fourth quarter. Despite this, the Thunder most likely would have won if not for a historic performance by Klay Thompson. It was obvious to
Game
anybody
6,
with
Klay.
2 working eyes
Still
after the
gives me
game that the
nightmares.
Thunder were completely deflated. What's up, Tom Brady? And that game 7 was going to be a nightmare for them. And that's what it was. Durant took just 10 shots through the first 3
I'll be there
quarters of
next
game
year.
7
I'll be
before
with y'all
making a
next
few late jumpers when the game was already out of reach to pad his stats. During his entire run with OKC, Durant had Russell Westbrook to lean on as a scapegoat. He constantly got passes from the media for underperforming in the playoffs, and he basically had it made as well as any superstar could. But
Yeah.
all the excuses in the world don't change the fact that Durant shot a horrible 28.9% from the floor in the fourth
But
quarter
that's
of the
Russ' fault.
2016 conference finals. I don't think anybody would have blamed Durant for leaving OKC because of Westbrook, but the fact that he went to join Golden State, the team that he choked the 3-1 lead to, is still repulsive to this day. OKC
That's why that shit don't compare to LeBron's move to Miami.
was
LeBron's move to Miami to an
Stop
extent
it. Nobody
is bad.
bringing him in this.
Nah, bro.
Stop it.
People love to
They just
compare
got
that
done
shit. That's
dismantling
a load of
67
shit,
win
bro.
Spurs team in the conference
Stop it.
semifinals.
No,
They had a
nobody's
3-1
bringing
lead
him
on
into
the
this.
73
I am.
Warriors. If Durant
Bitch,
played
I
up to
with
his
him.
usual standards,
Bitch,
they
I
definitely would
with
have
him.
gone to the
Because niggas
finals.
love doing
But
it.
instead, he decided to sabotage his own legacy and take the easiest road possible. When it comes to sports, athletes usually get criticism the more they lose.
He
But
had the
in Durant's
audacity to
case,
leave
he
them.
got more criticism the more he won. No amount of burner accounts or Twitter rampages will ever change the fact that Durant ruined the NBA for 3 years because of his own cowardice and beta male tendencies.
Damn.
Real ones will never forget his 2016 choke job. One of the few holes in Tim Duncan's legendary
There it is.
career
There's
is that
not
he
much.
never won back-to-back titles with the Spurs. And although he ended up winning 5 championships, I'm sure the 2004
There goes the Heat.
season is a missed opportunity he still thinks about. After all, he and the Spurs were up 2-0 on the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference semifinals, and he was performing great as usual in the postseason until he wasn't. The Spurs went from having a 2-0 series lead to losing in 6 games, in part because of Derek Fisher's miraculous shot at the end of Game 5, but also because Duncan woefully underperformed compared to his usual postseason standards in those games. In my opinion, Duncan had a lot more underwhelming postseason performances than people like to admit, and he skated by on a lot of criticism that other superstars usually face because
look at those stats.
Won titles early in his career. There's no questioning his greatness, but I'd like to see people be a little bit more honest about his playoff. Did you know that Hakeem Olajuwon lost 8 times in the first round? Probably not. But in defense of Hakeem, most of the times where his team lost in the first round, he was either out of his prime or he put up good numbers and lost. There is one major exception, though. The 1990 Western Conference first round versus the Los Angeles Lakers. The reason this series sticks out like a sore thumb is because
you can't do that, bro. I'm trying to be on inside the NBA, bro. You ruining my chances.
Bro.
I'm guilty by association.
Bro, I'm not saying I hate Kenny, but I hate Kenny.
Hakeem Olajuwon is legitimately one of the greatest postseason players of all time. He's one of the very few outliers in the sense that his production increases as well as his efficiency in the postseason. But as I alluded to, that wasn't the case in this series. Although he averaged almost an astounding 6 blocks per game, every other part of his game decreased from the regular season. Most notably, his scoring output and efficiency, a complete 180 from most of his postseason career. Hakeem is one of the most skilled and beloved NBA players of all time. But in this particular series, the dream was a nightmare. Believe it or not, there was once a time when Shaquille O'Neal was seen as a postseason underachiever. After 7 seasons in the league, he still had 0 rings, and 5 of his 6 playoff series losses were sweeps. But it's the one playoff series loss in that span where he wasn't swept that goes down as his most disappointing performance. The 1997 Western Conference semifinals versus
Kobe got something about this too, though.
Utah Jazz. When the Lakers acquired Shaq and the Orlando Magic in free agency that offseason, the title expectations were through the roof. But the self-proclaimed most dominant player ever went out with a whimper, seeing significant drops in both production and efficiency in the series. Shaq would later prove himself in the postseason with 3 straight dominant finals performances.
What I know is all the chokes. They improved at some point, but not all of it.
Is spearheading a Lakers three-peat. But in this 1997 series versus the Jazz, the Big Diesel played like the Big Weasel. Before forcing his way to Boston in 2007, Kevin Garnett didn't see much postseason success with the Minnesota Timberwolves. In his first 12 seasons with Minnesota, the Timberwolves won just 2 playoff series, both coming in 2004 when they made the Western Conference Finals. It would be foolish to blame Minnesota's playoff failures on Garnett, though, considering he was the only consistently good thing that they had. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that his postseason performance was always flawless. Take the 2000 Western Conference first round series versus Portland, for example. Other than the assist per game category, Garnett's production was seriously lacking both on a per game basis and efficiency wise. To put the cherry on top of the shit sundae, Garnett closed out the series with a dreadful 5 for 20 shooting performance at home. I really hope that the big ticket gave himself a ticket for this dreadful performance. Trying to pick James Harden's biggest postseason choke job is a monumental task because there's so many. In the end, I decided to go with the 2017 Western Conference semifinals versus the San Antonio Spurs. The reason this one sticks out to me among all the other chokes is because James Harden had everything set up perfectly for him to succeed in this series, and yet he still came up short both in the fourth quarter and overtime, most notably in Game 5 when he was blocked by a balding Manu Ginobili as time expired. We could even go back to Game 2 of the series when Harden put up a 3 for 17 clunker. But no, the reason this series takes the crown for Harden's biggest choke job is because of his Game 6 performance against the Kawhi-less Spurs team at home. Harden's performance in this game was so atrocious and so lackluster that even his biggest fans, and we all know how obnoxious Rockets fans can be, don't defend him for it. I don't like to play armchair psychologist when it comes to athletes, but it's obvious at at this point, with the repeated postseason failures, that Harden is missing something intangibly. 2004 was a difficult year for the late NBA legend Kobe Bryant, both on and off the court. Going into the 2004 season, the Lakers, despite all the feuding by Kobe and Shaq, were still picked to win the championship after adding Karl Malone and Gary Payton in free agency. Despite all the off-court bullshit, the Lakers finished with 56 wins and the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They went on to win the Western Conference and played the upcoming Detroit Pistons in the 2004 finals. Despite universal acknowledgement that the Pistons' defense was legit, there was no real reason to think that they would be able to beat the Los Angeles Lakers, who had won 3 of the last 4 championships. But the Pistons not only beat the Lakers, they pretty much kicked their ass, winning the series in 5 games and coming within one Kobe Bryant clutch shot in Game 2 of sweeping. But let's get real here. The reason why the Lakers lost this series falls solely on Kobe Bryant's shoulders. He was absolutely horrendous outside of Game 2. There's really not much more to say than that. The stats show it. The eye test showed it. It was an extremely disappointing end to one of the most successful eras in Lakers history. It's no secret that Kobe emulated and looked up to Michael Jordan, and if he had played much better than he did in 2004, he might have been able to equal MJ's 6 rings. Not that it really matters anyway. I mean, Jesus, the guy still has 5 rings. That's still really fucking good. You know what I mean? Rest in peace, Kobe and Gianna Bryant. Michael Jordan was so amazing at playing basketball that he never really had a bad playoff series. So trying to figure out what was his biggest choke job was difficult. There was obviously the 1995 series against the Orlando Magic where he had a late turnover and went cold late in Game 6 to lose the series. But people always talk about, oh, there's an asterisk next to that because he was coming back from baseball. But what about a year where he wasn't coming back from baseball and lost? Those did happen too, by the way. As stated earlier, no team ever completely shut down Michael Jordan, but the Detroit Pistons came about as close as you possibly could to taking him out of his comfort zone. And the 1989 Eastern Conference Finals
they tackled him in mid-air.
It's hard to believe now, but Michael Jordan's Bulls weren't always the top juggernauts in the NBA. At this point in his career, Jordan's Bulls were still trying to overcome the Pistons, who were the top team in the East. The underdog Bulls ended up taking a 2-1 series lead against the favorite Pistons, led by an amazing 46-point performance by Jordan in Game 3. But Game 3 was the only game of the series where Jordan really played like Jordan. And his performances in Games 4 and 5 are why the 89 Conference Finals is his biggest choke job, in my opinion. Game 4 saw Jordan shoot 5 for 15 and being held to 22 points on a loss. But Jordan's performance in Game 5 of the series remains his most perplexing performance. In 46 minutes, Jordan took just 8 shot attempts and finished with 18 points. He was outscored by his own teammate, Craig Hodges, and the Bulls lost the game to fall down 3-2 in the series. It's no surprise that Jordan's Last Dance documentary failed to mention this, as Jordan is still probably embarrassed by it. Facing elimination in Game 6, Jordan played better, putting up 32 points and 13 assists, but he shot a horrid 5 of 12 from the free throw line and committed 8 turnovers. The reason why Jordan is, at worst, one of the 2 best basketball players ever is because even his biggest choke job was still better than most players are on their best days. So the next time you hear somebody say Jordan would have done this or Jordan would have done that to degrade a current player, just remember that Jordan himself underachieved in the playoffs before too. After all, nobody is perfect. When you're talking about the biggest chokes in history on the court, it's hard to get any worse than LeBron James in the 2011 finals. As a huge LeBron fan, it pains me to do this segment, but it must be done. It wasn't just the fact that LeBron so badly underperformed compared to his usual standard. It was how he did it. He was already public enemy number 1 before the series for ditching Cleveland.
Stop. You did not believe. You people really believed he was going to win 7 rings, bro. Yeah. Not 7, 2.
Joined Miami with his friends Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh. So many people were desperately rooting to see him fail, and
they got it.
Didn't disappoint them. LeBron has been criticized for a lot of wrong reasons throughout his career, and he's been blamed for a lot of losses that weren't his fault, but there is no doubt about where the blame lies here. Out of the 6 final losses, this is the only one that can't be explained away. You couldn't blame
this nigga had a triple single in Game 4, bro.
The 6 finals losses, this is the only one that can't be explained away.
I can't score.
You couldn't blame him for losing because his teammates were underwhelming.
I mean, that's
like
normal
you could
sight.
in 2007,
Yeah, that's
2015,
normal.
and 2018. Or that his finals opponent
Brick.
just went supernova and was
Brick.
unbeatable like the 2014 Spurs and the 2017 Warriors. No. This was a series where if LeBron had played anywhere close to his normal
Jason
ability,
Terry
the Heat
scored on you
probably would have
crazy.
won this series in 4 or 5 games. The most incredible part is that despite LeBron playing like a poor man's Gerald Wallace, the Heat were this close to sweeping the Mavericks.
Hey,
The
that's your
Heat
point.
won Game 1, in which LeBron had his
that
only
year.
good game of the series. They ended up blowing a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter of Game 2 that would have put them up 2-0. They squeaked out an 88-86 win in Game 3 to go up 2-1, and they blew another late fourth quarter lead in Game 4, a game in which LeBron James scored 8 points. 8 points. That's
a
it.
triple
Just
single,
8,
dog.
and his team lost by just 3 points. A career 27
He played
point per
like
game
Laquan,
score,
man.
but up just 8 points. There's no excuse for it, and it's unacceptable. LeBron was absolutely abysmal in the fourth quarter all series long, and that was a big
Christ.
reason why the Heat fell in 6 games. And LeBron became the butt of every joke in America, a super talented choker who had no ring. But by now, in 2020, that's ancient history, as LeBron has made 7 more finals since and won 3 championships to go along with 3 finals MVPs. Still, no matter what LeBron accomplishes for the rest of his career, and believe me, he's accomplished a lot, there is no way to completely scrub out the shit stain that was the 2011
No way.
finals on his resume.
Big facts, bro.
Alright, man, cool culture game.
Bro, that 2011 finals, bro. I rewatched Game 4 and Game 5 the other day. I had to hold back tears, bro.
He woke up in the headstand.
Like, ain't no way this nigga played that bad, bro.
Bro, stop cussing.
No!
Yes.
No!
Yes.
I refuse. You got to rip my tongue out, nigga. I ain't, fuck you. Give it here. Give it here.
You gonna stop cussing.
I ain't gonna stop.
Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here.
Culture gang!
Culture game.
Culture gang!
We'll watch y'all next video.
Fuck this nigga.